What's going on, guys? It is Eric Pate here, back with another video. Why do I have a little bit of annoyance in my voice? This is my 100th time trying to make this video tonight because I don't know how to, apparently, I don't know how to read these over until I actually read them to you guys, and I don't want to make myself look like an idiot and then post them online to show how dumb I'm really I am. I'm actually not dumb. I'm actually pretty smart, but sometimes we might be in a rush doing things, and we might not know what we're doing. Anyway, let's go ahead and start off with episode 4 of Aviation. What if? And today's question is going to be, what if there was more air traffic controllers on duty the night of July 1st, 2002, especially around the German-Swiss border? Because an event happened at 35,000 feet. We're going to talk about it. Where two planes crashed at the German-Swiss border. They did not crash within a few minutes apart. They crashed about the same time. Why did they crash? Let's find out. Baskern Airlines Flight 2937 is a charter flight between Moscow Domodedovo Airport and heading over to Barcelona. The plane involved was a 7-year-old Tupolev 154. There are 45 school children, 2 additional children, 13 adults, and 9 crew members, including 5 pilots. I might add this. This plane was built in 1994, if I saw correctly. Late 1994. So back then, Russia was probably back then in the 90s. We still had planes where most of them had 3 crew members in the cockpit. Well, until about the time the first 747 and DC-10 and stuff was released, by the time those planes were released, until about the 60s, there were 5 people in the cockpit, usually. And Russia, at the time, Russia didn't really have the technology for them to only have 3, so they had to have 5. Still, well, 4 minimum, because they need a flight navigator, flight engineer. Of course, you have the captain and first officer. But a first officer was on board that was supposed to be working this flight, but ended up not doing it. But he rode jump seat. And the crew, the lovely crew in the cockpit, we have Captain Alexander Gross, first officer Oleg Gregora, first officer Marat Iklov, flight navigator Sergei Korlov, and flight engineer Oleg Welov. I might add this real quick. Gregorlov was really the chief pilot of Baskern Airlines. He is evaluating Captain Gross on this flight. At 8:48 p.m., Baskern 2937, or what we're going to refer a few times as BTC 2937, takes off from Moscow with Captain Gross flying the plane. DHL Flight 2937 is a cargo flight between Bahrain Airport to Brussels, with a stop in Bergamo, Italy. Captain Paul Phillips and First Officer Ben Campanani are in the cockpit for the flight and are the only 2 people aboard the Boeing 757F. I will go ahead and get into detail with that in just 1 second. We're going to go ahead and finish the slide, and I will go ahead and talk about how you can tell the difference between a cargo plane and a passenger plane when you're doing flight tracking. DHL 611 took off at 11:06 p.m. from Bergamo, heading to Brussels with First Officer Campanani flying the plane. Alright, so let me go ahead and tell you how you can tell if a plane's a passenger plane or a cargo plane. So if you're doing flight tracking on Flight Radar 24, that's the app I mainly use when I do my full flight videos. That's the app I mainly use, is Flight Radar 24. Every once in a while I would use I also use FlightAware, but I only use that for gate departures. Like the time you guys see my descriptions, if y'all ever read my descriptions in my full flights, you guys know I have a takeoff time and a landing time. Sometimes they might look really close together, because sometimes at the big airports, sometimes you can start tracking, but with Flight Radar 24, depending on the airport, like XNA, if you land on 16, usually your taxi is going to be shorter than if you was to land on 34. Because if you land on 34, you're basically going to be taxiing across the airport. But if you land on 16, as soon as you get off the taxiway, if you're on the taxiway, if you're going to pull into the following gates: B1, B2, A4, A7, A9, and A11. Your taxi is only going to be about 2 or 3 minutes if you're pulling into it. One of the following gates I just listed. If you're landing on 16, if you land, but if you're pulling into A2, A5, A6, A8, and A10, that taxi is only just going to be like a minute or so longer. If you land on 16, it's typically 3-4. If you haven't seen my full flight video when I took American Airlines Flight 4934, shoot, I was sitting on the left side. Never mind. I about said if sitting on the right. But yeah, but you can see that we passed the terminal, they'll taxi on the runway 34. And then when we take off from runway 34, we pass the terminal. Same thing when we land. We pass the terminal on the runway. Same thing when we land. We pass the terminal as we are landing. But let's say we're landing on 16. Most of the times when a plane gets to a slow enough speed, they can get off the runway at the next exit. And then most of the time, boom. Like the first set of gates I listed off, more likely you're going to see the gate right there. But anyway, how can you tell the difference, though, if it's a passenger plane or a commercial plane? Or, you know what, I'll get to that at the end of the video. I don't know why I got into... Oh, I was explaining something with flight tracking. So, anyway, that's how I got off topic there. So, how can you tell the difference between a cargo plane and a passenger plane when you're looking at the aircraft type? Most of the time, a cargo plane will have the letter F next to the aircraft type. Example, 747-400F, which is our usual flown with, I think, UPS, and Korean Air, and a couple other cargo companies. Atlas, and Amazon Air, and whatnot. So that's how you can tell the difference. I'm sorry, I got really sidetracked there with... Sometimes it might show what you see on the radar. Because I was talking about Flight Radar 24 and FlightAware. I can make a video comparing and contrasting them too. Next slide, please. Both planes are cruising at 36,000 feet. When they got close to each other, the TCAS on both planes were sounding. Air Traffic Controller Peter Nelson asked Bascurian 2937 to descend to 35,000 feet. But as soon as the descent started, their TCAS was telling them to ascend. The DHL then was also descending 35,000 feet because that's what the DHL's TCAS was saying. All this started about, I would say, 15 miles apart or 25 kilometers apart. Nelson keeps telling the Bascurian to descend. Now both planes are only about 5 kilometers or 3 miles apart. They made eye contact and they realized, oh crap, we're too close. So the DHL pilots pushed as hard as they can on their yoke, while the BTC 2937 pulls back hard on the yoke. 11:35 p.m. Disaster strikes. The tail of DHL 611 is in the belly of BTC 2937. The two planes only flew just a few more kilometers as they were coming down, and they both ended up crashing. killing all 69 passengers and crew on Baskin 2937, and both crew members on DHL 611, making the death toll of the total of all 71 people aboard both aircraft. I do have a video I'm going to show you. I did turn the sound off because I did get a copyright. I got some of copyright for sound. So in my last video when I was talking about the DC-10. But anyway, let's take a look at it. Let's go full screen this time. So DHL. It starts off DHL 611 popping through the clouds, and Baskin 2937 just cruising along the night sky. And here's the DHL 611 cruising, and oh, it kind of shows him descending a little bit. And same thing with 2937. This way I can slow it down. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit. Let's go half speed. Okay. You can see the planes are about to collide. I'm going to go ahead and rewind it just a couple more seconds. Just a couple of seconds here. I'm going to slow it down even more. Let's look at that again. Okay. Looks a lot like the picture that's in the slide. You can tell this is not going to end up pretty. We just watch it in slow motion. Let's watch it in normal speed. This is in normal speed now. Yeah. Okay. There's one thing I do want to say real quick. I'll say it here in just a sec. You can see bodies literally falling out of these aircraft. And then you can see this plane just plunging. Oh. Never mind to what I was going to say. Okay, I don't know what actually happened, but there is one thing I do want to say real quick regarding this. I have seen cases to where dolphins of planes have literally came off, but somehow the pilots are skilled enough to get it to an airport. Now, I don't know if the engine's really detached on 611, Flight 611, but I personally think that if they didn't, I think they might have had a chance at saving that airplane, DHL 611. As we just saw, there was really no way of saving 2937. So, I said we're going to talk about a major event before we talk about any related accidents, but I decided for today that we're just going to talk about a related accident first. Japan Airlines Flight 997 at 747-400D, descents were domestic, with 420 passengers and crew from Tokyo Haneda to Naha, barely avoid hitting Japan Airlines Flight 958, a DC-10 with 250 passengers and crew flying from Gamma at 37,000 feet. The pilots of both planes listened to air traffic controllers. Flight 958 finished its flight to Tokyo Narita. 907 diverted back to Haneda because there was a report of injuries. If the two planes did collide, it would have beaten the death toll of Tenerife by 94 for deadliest air disaster of all time. It was just 443 feet. I would say that's about the length of a football field from being the deadliest disaster. The death toll would have been 677, while Tenerife had 583. Like, you can freaking see how close this was. That was so freaking close. That was just so close. Okay. The biggest thing that came out of this case besides what we're going to talk about here in just a sec. Well, we're going to talk about this first, but the murder of Peter Nelson. After being fed up for a year and a half for the death of his wife and 2 kids, Vladimir Kolova held Peter Nelson responsible. Kolova went to Nelson's house in Zurich and showed him pictures of his wife and kids lying in their coffins. After a brief exchange of words, Kolova stabbed Nelson, killing him. In 2005, Kolova was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but ended up only serving 2. His release was because of his mental condition was not significant considered in the initial sentence. Eventually, though, Kolova was honored as a hero. Alright. Before I talk about, discuss about my prediction and ask a question again, and we talk about the, what is it? Changes they made. I understand that he was pissed off because he was trying to find the person responsible for this incident, but I don't think that gave him the right to go kill somebody. I understand that he held Nelson responsible. I understand Peter Nelson even took responsibility. Peter Nelson was the only one in that room, in that air traffic control room, at the time of this collision, and he was watching a delayed Airbus, and of course 2937 and 611. I completely understand that he was going through a lot of stress that night, and he had a lot on his mind. Air traffic control is not an easy job. It is not an easy job from cases I have watched. Not long ago, I watched one on a Southwest flight from about 3 years ago. And where a passenger was literally sucked out of the plane. They managed to get her back in, but she was already too far gone. But passengers tried their best to resuscitate her. But anyway, first officer was telling air traffic control that somebody had been, that there was a hole, that a window went out, and a passenger was sucked out. And the look on the air traffic control face was just priceless. He was like, I did not just hear that. Because anytime, because something an air traffic controller does not want to hear is that there are deaths regarding a decompression of some type. Same thing happened with Patrick Harden when he was working Flight 1549. When he was trying to get Flight 1549 back to LaGuardia after it hit birds. And we know what happened in the end. The plane landed in the Hudson. But he was, at first he took responsibility that he tried for the accident. But I personally think that I can't blame Patrick Harden. He tried to get the plane back to LaGuardia, but the pilots knew that there was no way that they were going to go to LaGuardia, and that at first the look on his face was like, oh no, I lost a plane, there are no survivors. And somebody told him like, hey, the plane actually did land. But yeah, he was like I just said, Peter Nelson was going through so much stress that on this particular night, because he's watching 2 different sectors. The most air traffic controller, most of the time air traffic controllers only needed to be watching one, but his colleague was on break, and that's why I came up with this question. Because a delayed Airbus came in to land at a nearby airport, and then Then he also had to keep an eye out for like 3 or 4 aircrafts on his sector, and 2 of them ended up hitting each other. I understand that this guy was fed up. He was wanting the person found. But that doesn't give him the right to kill him. That does not give him the right to murder a person just because he was mad. That does not give him no right whatsoever to kill somebody. And to my understanding, he did this in front of Nelson's daughter. And if he did, that's something that Nelson's daughter's never gonna forget. Is seeing that her own dad getting murdered for something that, yes, I would still put the blame on Nelson a little bit for the mid-air collision, but making somebody's daughter to see their dad getting murdered? God. I'm surprised this guy was not put away for life. Anyway, what is my prediction? So, my question was, what if there was more traffic controllers on duty the area that was watched where the collision occurred? I honestly think the collision would have been avoided. 100% avoided. Because like I said, Nelson wasn't just focused on the DHL and BTC plane on his sector. He was also watching a screen for a coworker who was on break. Because he had to help an Airbus A320 land at a nearby airport. So I think if there was more controllers on duty that night, then this collision would have been avoided. Completely avoided. But sometime after the crash, though, now on, the TCAS has more authority than air traffic control. I'm not joking. The TCAS has more authority than air traffic control. Because there was one I actually forgot to put it in here. I call it collision over the Amazon. When a small private jet collided with a Boeing 757. None of their but here's the thing. One of their TCAS wasn't on. So the collision wouldn't have been avoided. Because there was no alert. Well, also about that part of the Amazon forest, that was a dead zone for air traffic control. Yeah. So, but it happened at 37,000 feet. I think if those two TCAS was on, yes, that collision would have been avoided. These, of course, are my sources. I will put them in the link in the description if you want to take a look at them. The video I used is this one right here. Is this link right here? Is this link right here? If you want to take a look at it. This is the. I think this is the second swim disasters. Or is this the air crash investigation? I don't know. Because I got most of my information from these two videos. Let's just see. God, my internet's such crap tonight. But yeah. I think this is the second swim disaster, so let's see. No, this is... Alright. I know which one's what. 413S. This one's the air disasters, this one's second from disasters. I honestly prefer seconds from disasters over the air disasters one, because that gives you more of a time breakdown of when everything occurred. And thanks for watching this episode of Aviation What If. My next one might be on United Airlines, like 232. Unless I happen to find another case before I make it this time next month. Like, subscribe, comment, favorite, be nice, could be awesome. Air Pete on Deal with Hates. I'll see you guys later.